What a weekend it was in the Premier League. It all started what seems like weeks ago with Chelsea's 3-0 win against Luton on Friday night. Then on Saturday, Tottenham got a 2-0 win at Bournemouth. Arsenal were 2-1 up against Fulham, but that Fulham equaliser, having come down from being 1-0 down after 1 minute against Fulham, was not enough for them. They will be really disappointed with that 1-1 draw, as we heard from Wrighty. Brentford with a 1-1 draw against Crystal Palace. A game that could prove significant at the bottom of the table come the end of the season, when Everton were beaten 1-0 at home to Wolves. Manchester United, they were 2-0 down within 4 minutes against Nottingham Forest, but they came back to win it by 3-2. We'll talk about what that tells us about both sides a bit later on. Brighton, having started the season well, 3-1 was the scoreline as West Ham took all 3 points at the Amex. Then on Sunday, Burnley were beaten 3-1 by Aston Villa. Sheffield United got a late equaliser against Manchester City, only for a fantastic strike by Rodri to earn them all 3 points. And Newcastle, as we know, beaten 2-1 by Liverpool in the most dramatic and chaotic of fashions at St James's Park. With us today to go through as much of that as we can possibly get our hands on are Darren Lewis and Izzy Christensen. What a weekend it was. And you had a chance to be in the UK, keeping across it all, back from Australia. Izzy, you were out there for the start of the Women's World Cup as well in Australia and New Zealand. Nice to be back.
It's great to be back. The Premier League.
I know you miss it.
Yeah, I've had to do a lot of catching up on stuff, but it's been a good start.
You've been here right since the start of the Premier League season, so you're across everything. We've got no gaps to fill in for Izzy.
Well, the amount that's been going on, I've still got stuff to catch up on, and I believe Wrighty's still a bit jet lagged.
I'm a bit nice one, Izzy.
Yeah, a week later is still jet lag.
I feel it.
Yeah,
I was a week
the
later.
Drama. I have to drag it out, I have to drag out the jet lag.
Well, look, we know you've been keeping across everything, but we thought we'd just do a quick recap of what's been going on in the Premier League while you've been away.
Yeah.
So obviously the big question is Erling Haaland still in great scoring form from last season, his record-breaking goal-scoring Premier League season? The answer is, as you might have guessed, yes, he very much is still in goal-scoring form from last season. He's just phenomenal, and that's just carried on.
Wow.
He's just carried on from where he's left off.
Oh, this is a great goal.
It is a fantastic goal. Bukayo Saka. Is he on good form at the start of the season? Yes,
so.
He is as well.
Yes, he is.
And then did you see this celebration with the archer, where the Newcastle fan did it back to him, which was also brilliant? We've got Luton's first
scoring.
Premier League goal ever. Mo Salah substituted on the opening day of the season. Not happy. And then, of course, we're trying to sort of get to the bottom of these Saudi rumours.
Yep.
Jurgen Klopp has drawn a line under them. This is a penalty that wasn't given.
I remember about that. Everybody said that should have been a penalty.
Manchester United take all 3 points in that game. This was a red card.
Was it?
Against McAllister.
Look, even look how surprised he is.
He's very confused by all of that one. And then this from Matoma.
Wow.
We just put that in because we love it. It was just a great goal.
Jeez, unstoppable stuff. He's, Brighton, watch out.
He could be one of the players to watch this season. All eyes, of course, will be on Moises Caicedo after his transfer, after a protracted battle, a much publicised battle. It wasn't the best of starts for him, as he gave away a penalty on his debut. And it's been a little bit wobbly, but we know what he can do in the Premier League.
Absolutely, yeah. He'll see the spotlight's a lot different now, but I'm sure he'll deal with it. He'll deal with it.
Do you feel like you're up to speed now?
I do feel like I'm up to speed now. I am.
Can we talk about Liverpool's win against Newcastle?
Brilliant
because
win.
It's a game that brought all the chaos.
It did. Obviously the sending off, but like Newcastle with Gordon, I thought Gordon, what I've seen of him up until this point, that's the best I've ever seen. And I know he's nowhere near what his final form is, but he caused so many problems for them. Yeah. They looked so dishevelled with him and running at them.
I tell you what, you're the first person I've seen make him the headline player from that game. But he did get the opening goal of it. Let's hear what Jurgen Klopp made of it.
It was more difficult than the Barcelona game.
Really?
Yeah, of course, because the Barcelona game was at home. We played a sensational first game, lost it 3-0, but knew a lot about ourselves. Today is completely different. You need these kind of things to grow together, and you cannot create it. You have to force it pretty much, and the boys did that today. Oh my God, how much I enjoyed that in the last second and the second goal. And half-time we said, if he can turn this, then it's really something we can tell our grandkids, and I see mine in 10 days, so I will tell him.
Yeah, Jurgen Klopp became a grandfather over the break over the summer, so he's going over to tell a very small baby all about that win against Newcastle United. But look, that was a very heavily edited interview and very heavily edited answer from Jurgen Klopp. There was so much emotion in those post-match interviews, both from him, from Trent Alexander-Arnold, from Alisson. There was a sort of Spanish language interview from Darwin Núñez. Emotions were running really high there with the win against Barcelona when they were 3-0 down and had to win 4-0 at Anfield. Really?
And
with 10 men as well.
I think that the drama of the actual occasion is one thing, but you're right to point out the fact that it was a heavily edited interview, because he was also asked about whether it could be the turning point for Darwin Núñez and for Liverpool's season. In fact, the Liverpool reboot. And he was saying, actually, yes, because I'm still trying to build a team. People are asking when Núñez will get a regular start in the team, and he was saying, I still don't know what my best team is. I've got 3 new midfielders, and I have strikers to burn, so what am I going to do? Now, I think you're right. When you think about Barcelona and the platform it gave Liverpool to win silverware, they are epoch-making moments. But I think as far as the culture of this new team he's trying to build, you guys can talk better to me than to me to the fact that sometimes you need a win like this to band a group of players together to kind of set them. They can look back at this moment as the time we fought, we dug in, and we pulled off an outstanding win. If you think about the fact that Newcastle's home record's outstanding. They've only lost before yesterday 4 times in 34 matches at home.
3 of them were against Liverpool.
Exactly. And that's the reason why yesterday was such a good win, because that win yesterday was the 3rd. But it was pulled off with a really a new team, a new midfield, a group of players that not a lot of people had a lot of belief in. I think that is one of the best performances for a long time. I wouldn't say better than Barcelona, but I do say better than a lot of performances in the recent past.
It will be sweeter for Liverpool because there are always teams that are chasing your tail. And Newcastle are that team that are chasing the tail. So if you're in Liverpool's camp right now, to do one over your rivals, obviously not geographically, but in terms of where the league is at, that's why it would have been even sweeter for Liverpool yesterday.
Absolutely. I mean, when I see that sort of interview, I'm always looking for, as the journalist, what I can take out of it. And sometimes post-match interviews are just, it's great that we won. It's fantastic that we won. I'm really pleased.
Seems something deep.
But I learned a lot from that because what he seemed to be... I was quite struck, for example, by the fact that he was saying, I still don't know what my best team is. I still don't know what my best formation is. And then him saying, you know, this is a... It's weird because 1 minute he said it and then he seemed to row back on it. But I definitely do think yesterday was a huge moment in terms of the direction he wants to take the team in, the character the team's building together. Jose Mourinho used to say, whenever he built a team, I want to win something, anything, just so that we can sample that culture of winning. And I think that's what this Liverpool did yesterday.
Yeah. What I think's really interesting is how quickly the narrative changes in football. We've only had 3 games, and I think the story around both these clubs has changed probably 3 times over the course of the weekend. But it is just really interesting that suddenly you look at the 3 results that they've had so far. Yeah. You think, well, Liverpool... patchy performance maybe in a 1-1 draw against Chelsea on the opening weekend. And then they follow that up with a win against Bournemouth, but they started very shakily and they were expected to beat Bournemouth at home anyway. You look at Newcastle, who start with a fanfare, with that fantastic performance and result against Aston Villa. Then it's a 1-0 defeat by Manchester City, which up until the start of the game against Liverpool was everybody gets beat by Manchester City. No shame in that one. And now people are looking maybe at the performance and saying, well, they just didn't quite seem like themselves. And now that they've crumbled, you know, they were up against 10 men and they've squandered a 1-0 lead. The story around Newcastle, with Brighton coming up at the Amex next season, next weekend, is a completely different feel around the club. Is that what you're looking for at the early stage of the season? As Darren said, those moments, those games, that can just drive the whole feeling behind the club. Yes,
you do. And you know, I saw a lot of stuff with Trent the other day, with him inverting and then obviously Gordon scoring the goal and then, you know, Van Dijk getting sent off. I think one of the big worries for me is their centre halves, whether it's Joel Matip, Joe Gomez, you know, and Konate. You know, when you're going to invert like Trent is, you do need somebody behind you who's really you confident of cleaning that up, like Arsenal with Saliba. You see how much we missed him. There's so many things like that can go wrong with Liverpool that once they get that right, I think the strength of that defence up, and then you've got that midfield now, you can start seeing that you're going to get something from that. And then what else we're seeing from Liverpool is a sturdiness that they're going to not concede. Then if you've got Nuno, if you've got Gomez now, was it? Darwin
Nunez.
Darwin Nunez. I've been away quite a while, yeah.
Jet lagged, yeah.
When you see Darwin Nunez...
Because I know you know who Darwin Nunez is.
Said it in an Aussie accent.
Mate.
When you see Darwin Nunez taking half chances when you've gone down to 10 men, that galvanises. Yeah. And that will galvanise him and the team, because what the team will then realise is that we can keep this tight. Yeah. Our midfield's starting to get solid. I still believe the back line's what Liverpool have to worry about, even when Virgil comes back. And then if Darwin Nunez continues to score like that and not missing the chance what he's missing last season, then Liverpool will be way amongst that. They will be amongst it.
I'm going to come on to Darwin Nunez because I was trying to work out where the best place to talk about him is. And now you've mentioned him, I feel like this could be a seminal moment for him as well, to have a game in which he scores 2 late goals, in which he does it in style as well. I mean, these aren't scuffed, bundling balls over the line. These are really cool, collected finishes. And that's what he's been accused of lacking in previous games.
He's just 20, he's 24 now. 24, he's not long been, he's come from different league. He's come to a massive club like Liverpool. He's eager to do well. And you could see that with some of his finishes last season. Finishes where you think, how's he missed that? And getting himself into positions where you think, wow, what great movement. But then not quite finishing off. If people are going to judge him on that, they're making a big mistake, a massive mistake, because what I saw of him and what you see of him when he finishes, he still tries to finish how he should. He doesn't he's not tentative. Yeah. And what we saw with those 2 finishes, they weren't tentative. That was somebody who's obviously worked a lot more on himself, on his basics. From that side of the pitch, I'm going to hit it across the goalkeeper, I'm going to get my tack, and bam, that's clinical. And 2 really clinical finishes that they both needed.
Do you think the pressure got to him last season?
I think
because he missed chances. As a Premier League striker for Liverpool, you should be scoring.
Yes.
Right? Those 2 finishes yesterday were clean, clinical, fast, top class finishes.
You know what will happen is that as you continue to miss and you've come for such a big number and teams are having a go at Liverpool, he's a flop, he's this and that. You hear about this, you get more tense, you get tighter, and some of the finishes what you see him try, it was a tight finish. It was somebody that was wound up. The 2 finishes the other day were 2 finishes in a time of the game with down to 10 men of real composure and clinicalness. And that if he's clicked, then people are in trouble.
Do you know, the great thing about what you're saying, and without embarrassing here, is that you're not being wise after the event. We did many shows last season when you were saying, if he gets the opportunities and he keeps putting himself forward for those opportunities, he will be in a position to score a lot of goals, and which looks as though that's about to happen. But the other thing you just said a second ago, us in the media, the culture of the way we judge players has changed now. And we are now much more mindful of the fact that if a player comes from a different league, they're coming from a different culture. Another of the things that struck me about the post-match yesterday was the fact that he doesn't even speak English yet. Alisson does, and Alisson's English was first class. He's been there now 5 years, but he couldn't when he got to this country.
Jurgen Klopp has talked about that with Darwin Nunez towards the end of last season and said that sometimes it can be an issue because he's trying to relay tactical information on the training ground, and he does speak some English, but isn't confident enough to do an interview in it.
Listening to Jurgen Klopp and his post-matches, I struggle to understand him.
And
the same with Andy Robertson screaming down the dressing room, before the game. You can imagine how riled up some of the players get. And for Darwin Nunez, he's probably stood there wondering what the hell's going on.
And I think for us as journalists, we have to. And we are, Diana, and I think about a lot of the way my colleagues judge some of these players. Huge price tag, yes, but he's come from a different league, a different culture, different style of play. His family yet to adapt to life in this country as well. And as everybody knows, you're happy at home, you're happy at work. And I think as far as he is concerned, you can't even begin to judge him.
No.
Until you get to a place where he is operating with everything falling into place. Yeah. And that's why I start to look at him this season, not last season.
But he took yesterday by the scruff of the neck and just said, I'm going to sort this out. And it was a positive impact that he had, but as well as the other substitutions Jurgen Klopp made towards the end of the game. You're down to 10 men, you're thinking, oh, should we sit off and play for a draw? But they absolutely went for it. As soon as you bang the first one in, you're thinking, OK, it's coming. You could feel it brewing. Liverpool were going to score again.
Lizzie, do you think that... I was watching this with my kids, and my kids don't think I know anything about football. But I was saying, I think they're staying in the game until the 77th minute, and then he put on those 2 offensive substitutions, and they really did seem to turn the tide of the game in Liverpool's favour. Do you think that was deliberate? I
think it was, because he's done it before. He's come back from being 10 men down before to win the games. I think there's a statistic I can't remember off the top of my head, but I also look at it and go, well, on the flip side, it was Newcastle's poor game management as well. I think it was a little bit of both, but I think it was a really positive step from Jurgen Klopp. And going back to your original point, right, about Anthony Gordon, we saw a game yesterday that could be the making of 2 Premier League strikers. Because Anthony Gordon needed a goal. That was his first goal at St James's Park. And you're like, hang on a minute. He came there to be a big player, and he's not been shy admitting that. And, big confidence from the man, but also, why not? Why not go for it? And I think yesterday, although they lost the game, you're thinking, OK, could this be the start of something big for Anthony Gordon coming up?
You hope so.
Oh, but what's interesting, as you said, is that he was substituted.
Unbelievable.
And you talked about, poor game management from Newcastle's point of view and good substitutions from Liverpool, about the patience. And there was maybe one wave of attack before they had that wave that resulted in the 2 goals that won them the game. But the substitutions were absolutely key in that game. Jurgen Klopp went very attacking with his substitutions. And Eddie Howe seemed to take off the players who were hurting Liverpool the most. Now, someone like Tonali maybe isn't up to full 90-minute fitness yet. And there are some of them you could make that case for. But some of them you could question. You could say the game turned on the substitution. Yeah,
and it comes back to the narrative that you were discussing before. Now, all of a sudden, are we, speaking about Newcastle, OK, what are they doing now? They're playing Brighton this weekend coming up. But going back to the substitutions, the Newcastle ones, I'm thinking... is this part of the narrative of Eddie Howe, creating this team where he's kind of nurturing players and he's giving minutes out? Right, you played in the Premier League. Giving minutes out. You can't be giving minutes out in the Premier League. You've got to, earn them, which I understand. But also, hang on a minute, what does the game need?
And
if that player needs 30 minutes, he's sat on my bench, but I don't need him in this game. You don't put him on for 30 minutes.
No. I just think that when... especially, you can imagine that Raw and Anthony Gordon. This is it. He's there. He's playing against a top team, and he's ripping them to shreds. And that, for me as well, mentally, you think, what's that? Why is he taking me off? Yeah. You know what I mean? Because there's no way the Liverpool defenders are not thinking, thank goodness he's going off.
Yeah.
You just can't. You know what it does as well is you can. When a good player gets taken off, the players themselves look around at each other and say, why is he taking him off? It has an effect on the team.
But he brought Harvey Barnes in, put Harvey Barnes on, probably with the theory that I'm going to keep fresh legs on Trent Alexander-Arnold, right? Harvey Barnes gets a chance down the left, needs to square it to Callum Wilson because Callum Wilson's in my fantasy team. Right? But he doesn't do it. And I'm thinking that's a big moment in the game. That is a big moment in the game. And if Harvey Barnes has that impact, we're not having this discussion about Anthony Gordon coming off the pitch. But I completely agree with you. If someone's doing well, keep them on. Keep them on.
Eddie Howe talked about that after the game, saying we had opportunities there to put this to 2-0. And Alisson had a fantastic game and made one brilliant save and made more saves than he's made in any other Premier League game in that one against Newcastle. But Eddie Howe, of course, knows this record against Jurgen Klopp. He's got one win in the 14 games where he's come up against them. He's lost 11 in a row against Jurgen Klopp. And we saw Jason Tindall on the sidelines. We saw him at the top here sort of shushing Jurgen Klopp when Virgil van Dijk was sent off after 28 minutes and he himself was a little quieter and more subdued by the end of the game.
Yes, humble him.
But is there a sense where managers can get into each other's heads in that way? I mean, look, you look at it and you look at where Liverpool and Bournemouth were when Jurgen Klopp came to the Premier League and where Eddie Howe would be managing, and some of that. But they've moved around and they have met 14 times.
I think yesterday, those numbers speak to psychology as much as anything else. Obviously, there is a calibre of player that you're talking about. Liverpool have had a much higher calibre than the teams that Eddie's managed, but I think Izzy's spot on. I'm reading Sir Alex's book, Leading. I'm a bit late, but...
Say rereading and we'll all leave it.
Get it off the top shelf.
Stuff. But Sir Alex said that he used to love when managers used to take offensive players off and put defensive players on, because you're handing the advantage completely to my team.
Yeah.
And all of my attacking firepower is able to overwhelm you. We won't do it straight away, but eventually we will. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. I think Eddie, he blinked first.
Yeah.
You have a man advantage. You guys know better than me. You've got a man advantage. You've got to press home that advantage. Why are you trying to take off a player who's been visibly scaring the life out of Trent Alexander-Arnold in favour of somebody else who comes on, but their decision-making, maybe they're not in the heat of the game, as you were saying.
This is why I think the narrative is so interesting at this very early stage of the season, and why it might not be, and probably isn't, entirely fair, because this is Eddie Howe, who took over the Newcastle side. And yes, he's been funded well, but so have a lot of Premier League teams. But he took them from the brink of a relegation battle into the Champions League. And now we're only 3 games into the season, but there are already starting to be questions that were sort of lingering even when he was appointed. Is he the kind of manager that can lead a team to Champions League football? Well, he's done that. We're yet to see how they're going to perform in the Champions League, but he's taken them there. Is he the kind of manager who can challenge for trophies? That's not the kind of manager that he's been. That's not the level he's operated at. Is he the kind of manager who can make those big take those big risks in terms of his substitutions in games? Will he know when to gamble? Can he trust a good squad like the one he has?
I think that this season is going to be the season where people are going to start to really take notice of Newcastle, simply because last season everybody's surprised that they're doing what they're doing, and they're in there, and they deserve to get into the Champions League with the way they played. But this is the season where we will find all those questions out about Eddie Howe, because now he's actually he's at the table with the big guys. Yeah. So the substitutions, the squad rotation, everything has to be right now. Yes.
So
this is where we're judging.
They've got Brighton, and we're saying that could be tricky, and this is a bruised Brighton coming into this game at the Amex at the weekend as well. But after that, you look at them and you think that is not a bad run of fixtures for Eddie Howe and Newcastle to get momentum.
Until they get to top of the league, West Ham.
But the thing is, you look at Brentford. Brentford's never an easy game any time. Sheffield United are going to be up for it simply because they want to get themselves going. There's games there that if you're not, there's games there now that Eddie Howe realises that, but I have to win these games. So this is what happens. This is what Mikel Arteta realised last season and the season before. There's games now that you have where you look at, we have to win these games, and that is where he is now. That's the place where he is.
Here's a question. This is a debate I heard yesterday. That if you are Newcastle, you are now a Champions League team. Mm-hmm. You are now pushing to be in the title race. If maybe not yet to win the title, you're pushing to be in that title race. Can you then go from that game against Liverpool and say, we're going to take the positives? Or you've both been in teams that have challenged for honours and been at that very top level. Do you have to be a team that is stung by that comes away and feels hurt and feels that you need to take need to have some kind of reaction to it, rather than let's take the positives and we go again? Does it have to be a bit harsher than that now?
The answer that I can give to that is, what do you hear coming out of the club? What messages do you hear coming out of the club? Prior to this season, obviously they've released a documentary on the club, and all the messages and things that I take from that are, where as Newcastle United, we want to be a big club, challenging, right? Okay, so that's what they've said. They've laid their bed, if you like. After games like that yesterday, it's got to sting you. It's got to hurt so bad that you want to train today. That you want to train today and put it right. And it's a long time to prepare after a loss. Yeah. Brighton away at the weekend, not an easy fixture at all. Two bruised teams.
And the thing as well with that is, you make a good point. The thing with that is, Kels, is that now, because like I said, people are looking at Newcastle as a top 4 Champions League team. So now you've got to go away to those teams and at least not lose. Because you draw that game and people say, if you don't play well, they say, Newcastle can't deal with the pressure. That's what we'll start seeing with Newcastle this season, if they don't go to these places and get something and dig something out of it, if they're not playing well, but they win the game. That's what you have to do. And that's what they're going to learn this season. And this is where we'll find out how tough and how deep the Newcastle team go.
I think Wrighty's, both of you are spot on. Newcastle, so I will take this as from a point of view of a journalist. If I'm covering that game, or if I'm doing an overview of the game, I'm saying Newcastle are avowedly saying we want to be a superpower in not just in domestic football but in European football. Superpowers don't have hard luck stories. So if you're judging Newcastle, you're judging them on the expenditure, you're judging them on the ambition that they themselves say that they've got. You're judging them on the fact that if you own Newcastle and you are in a run of dropping points in games that you would expect to win, you're looking around and you're saying, who else is available? Is Conte available? And you've got people offering these players to you as a football club anyway. Sorry, these managers, if you like, who are out of work or who might be in lesser jobs but feel they could step up and bring their A-list profile to a club like Newcastle. And when you take the Newcastle job, you take it knowing that that could be the case. It's not fair and it's not right necessarily, but it is the case that if you're not winning games you should, there are other managers with a higher profile, a bigger body of work who could take your job. So you don't have that room for manoeuvre.
No. And with player recruitment, you've almost got to act one step ahead. So last season, where they finished, towards the end of last season, you've got to look at it and go, well, if they want to be this club that's challenging, how do we stay one step ahead of the pack? You go straight away recruitment, because they're happy with their manager. They're happy with Eddie Howe. I mean, I think he's a fantastic manager. But I think recruitment-wise, I look at the back four of Newcastle, and I'm like, is that good enough? Is that good enough to be where they want to be?
But
and
if they are good enough, though, is it? If they are good enough, but the manager, as you've been saying, makes in-game decisions that takes the momentum away from them when they're in the ascendancy and hands it to the opposition, that's what people will look at. They'll say,
absolutely,
Jose Mourinho, a Conte, a this, a that, a Tuchel, would they have done that in that moment? Not necessarily.
We'll have to see this season, Darren. I think that this season we'll get a lot of the answers what we're asking now to those questions simply because we need to see him in those situations. We need to see him against Pep and Klopp and Arteta and all the managers. You know, you have to say Ange now. You have to say Ange now. I'm quite pleased for him. But you do have to wait until we see how he navigates this season.
And do you know what? That's far too sensible an answer. We need to wait over 38 games. We've had 3. Make your mind up. Talking of Ange Postecoglou, we are going to be turning our attention to North London next because they had mixed fortunes at the weekend as Spurs were on top, but Arsenal faltered. So, Wrighty, the other thing that you may have missed while you've been away is we love Ange now. Yeah. This is now an Ange fan programme.
No, but I love it. Remember, I've come from the world. Yes. I come from the place of Ange. I come from Australia,
man. You come from the Ange down under.
A land down under.
Honestly, all the interviews I was doing was how's he going to do, and all you could say is you just hope that he has a good start. You just hope he has a good start because obviously the Tottenham fans, they don't know too much about it. They know he come from Celtic, but like he said, he's been in the game for a while. And, you know, being at Celtic's helped him with this situation with Tottenham. Harry Kane going when he's gone as well has helped because the noise kind of quietened down around Tottenham once he got there, I found, because of the way he is and his character, the way he is. And we're seeing him playing the football. What's got to happen is he's got to have time. I was speaking to Tim Cahill. Tim Cahill said if he gets time so as he can get what he wants to do in that team and put the players that he Tottenham will be very happy with him. And at the moment, it's looking good.
You know that beat very well at Tottenham, and the fans are fully on board. And you're talking about him, you know, getting enough time. It doesn't feel like there's going to be any pressure from fans anytime soon.
I was on a fans podcast last week, actually, and I asked them all, is this the fastest you've ever taken to Absolutely, yes.
Before a ball was kicked.
Before a ball was kicked. I think they saw the way he played in pre-season. They see the way that he relates to them. He's very dry, very droll, very down-to-earth, talks about... someone asked him at the weekend about whether James Maddison was a bargain at £40 million. He said, bargain? I don't know what world you live in. What world £40 million. He's very, very down to earth. But one of the key things that I think has been really helpful, and I've been of this opinion for a long time, they sold Harry Kane and they got a huge amount of money from him. I think they've needed to do that for a long time. A lot of the Tottenham players had been hiding behind Harry Kane's goals and not showing any leadership.
Right.
And what Spurs have done is rebuilt that team. a new centre-half leadership.
Right.
And what Spurs have done is rebuilt that team. A new centre-half, they brought back Udogie from loan.
Yes.
Bissouma and Sarr are playing. Bissouma looks like the player they bought from Brighton.
Yep.
Sarr's getting an opportunity that he didn't have under Conte. The arrival of Maddison is a game changer. I'm sure we'll focus on him a bit later. And they've got a guy with...
And they've got Bentancur coming back.
Bentancur coming back. And the thing is about Postecoglou, he spent his career defying the odds. When he first got the job at Australia, I remember doing some stuff for Australian TV down there, and a few doubts, but he won them over with that commitment to attacking football. At Celtic, when he arrived, a few celebrated names will say, who is this guy? You know, undefeated at home at Celtic. This is a guy, and not just undefeated, but playing great stuff, winning silverware, winning people over. And now he's come here, and I mean, this is a hard job. And I think the one good thing that might work in his favour is that the managers that were there before him, they almost felt like they were doing Spurs a favour.
Yes, good shout.
Whereas this guy he's hungry to win, to defy the odds. And I think he's going to be sensational.
Fingers crossed for him.
He is, and he's just playing the kind of football that Tottenham fans want to see. It feels like a breath of fresh air from everything that they're saying, everything that we've seen from Spurs. And yes, you know, it doesn't have to be attractive attacking football in order to be successful. But having had the opposite and not had any success with it, this seems infinitely preferable to them.
Yeah, it looks good. Early days, and I'm sure he'll be the first person to admit it's early days. And what I really love about him, going back to your point, Darren, is in the media, whenever he's given an interview, he always speaks about the team we're looking to be, we want to be. He never speaks about the team they are at present because he knows it's a work in progress. And I think what he's done is his presence has diluted all of the noise around Tottenham, and he's taken that pressure off the players. I think his biggest challenge moving forward is sustaining this level of football and improving it, but also the number 9. I think Richarlison, I know him well from Everton, desperate for him to do well, and he just looks like he's trying a bit too hard. And I think that if they can get him ticking, I think we're starting to look at a team that's going to function at a high level this season.
I think, you know, you've seen them linked with Brennan Johnson. So you see at midfield, Bissouma, Sarr, Bentancur, and Maddison in and around there. I think with Richarlison up front, if you can get a Brennan Johnson, and then you can get the Richarlison what went to Everton when he started to really do, and then you can get that maybe 10, 12 goals out of him. You'll get goals from other places. And I think that then you're starting to look at a Tottenham team that's going to cause a lot of problems. I feel that you're right, I think that Richarlison's just trying too hard. He needs to just calm down. Harry Kane's not there at the moment. They haven't got the centre forward. So you stay fit. You're going to play. So just stay calm. You know what I mean? Probably might need a manager to let him know, listen, just relax and play. I'm going to play you in the games. And then he just build himself into the game. Because if they do carry on what they're doing, Maddison's looking amazing. And they can bring in another winger like a Brennan Johnson who's very exciting. He'll be a perfect Tottenham player. I can totally see it, just like I see it with Maddison. Then you start to see that Tottenham, in their final form, could look very, very dangerous.
Yeah, Maddison just feels like the perfect fit on all fronts for the club, for the supporters, for the manager's style of football.
And for him as well, himself as well, where he is.
I love him. I absolutely love the way he plays football. Last season, at Old Trafford, playing for Leicester, I said on commentary, he's the best player in the Premier League at taking the ball on the half-turn, without a doubt. The way that he can manipulate his body with the ball is the best, I think, in the Premier League, open to discussion. But contributing with goals now to his game, he's almost like, I don't know, is it brave the main man at Spurs?
He will be.
And he can be, and he will be, but he's also OK with not being the main man because he knows he can function at a high level. But with Spurs, looking at their squad last season, I used to call them a bit like a plane, like heavy weighted on the wings, and they had so many wing backs, but nothing through the middle, right? And then look at them now, and he's just gone back to a conventional system with a back four, solid. Everyone knows their jobs, and Perisic is starting to sort of get back into the team. You've got Højbjerg, who, you know, he's a good Premier League number 6, in my opinion. He plays a bit sideways, but he's safe. He's got players that are going to come in, and you can see the culture around the team. All the players want to play for him, and that's the presence of Ange Postecoglou. He brings that about him. I love watching him. I love Maddison, and I think they've got a bright future.
When you see Maddison, I think the Tottenham fans will be very surprised at how much work he gets through. He'll go box to box. You see him in the midfield. You see him for that goal there, right up the top end. He's got a free rein. right? And someone like him with a free rein, then you get pace up front. You get people who get good, people who look after you like Basuma, like Bentancur, even Sarr looks... Then all of a sudden, you've got James Maddison just floating in and around all of that. Just get Richarlison, just needs to just nick a couple of goals, get themselves going.
I agree. I think that there has been this thing about what would Spurs do without Harry Kane, but they've rebuilt the team. And I think that's what they've needed to do. The left centre-back position's been a problem position for Spurs for several seasons. Mickey van der Ven, he's coming, he's slotted in. And he reminds me a lot of when Toby Alderweireld made Jan Vertonghen a better centre-half for being there. They're a lot more settled. They're not making silly mistakes anymore. Van der Ven's very quick as well, a good covering player. And then they've got that protection in front of the back four in Sarr and Basuma as well. The irony about where they are at the moment, and you're right, Postecoglou's been saying that we're only a little bit of a step where we need to be, but we're nowhere near there yet, is that Son and Kulusevski, who have been at times their best players, are nowhere near where they can be as yet. The other thing is that he was at the press conference last Friday, and I asked him about where he tends to look. And the answer was very interesting because sometimes managers can set themselves up to be really clever. He told this story about when he was in Japanese football and he was managing Yokohama and he played against Kawasaki Frontale, and a guy came on and ripped his team apart. He'd come straight out of university and he says he put his school books down, came on the pitch, ripped us apart. And he said, I turned to my guys and who's this guy? Mitoma. And he said it was him and another guy called Reo Hitate. And when he went to Celtic, he tried to buy Mitoma, and Brighton had already got in there and signed Mitoma. But he signed Hitate, took him to Celtic. But he said he will go back to the Asiatic market to see if he can get players there that are very, very cheap in this world of players going for huge numbers.
That was the wider point he was making. He's like, there's plenty of talent out there that isn't, tens of millions of pounds if you know where to look. And obviously he has that link to that market. But the success of James Maddison has just been extraordinary and instant. And, of course, the way he's endeared himself to the supporters, or certainly to the home supporters, at least. Because when he was over taking a corner against Bournemouth, took a little bit of advice as to whether or not to get the ball right on the edge of the corner of the corner
nice.
D, make sure because
he was okay. Even in the heat of it, he's still got time to have a little like banter with the fans. It's nice because like people kind of like get a bit too... I loved it.
Got a touch of the Ian Wrights about it, hasn't it? That move.
Because you know what, the fans, that's something they'll talk about as well. He got us there. I'll get him there.
Should we bring the mood down and talk a little bit about Arsenal? You're not too despondent.
No,
it's only a draw against Fulham. But having taken the lead in that game, you go behind really early on. You think, right, fine, we'll play our way back into it. This should be, let's lose our heads. We did it, but to concede that equaliser, is that what will make it all feel very flat?
That's probably, but it's early in the season. It's something that you want to... If it's going to happen, it happens now, so as people can look back and see, right, what are we doing? What's lacking concentration? Yes, the manager's moving things around, certain players not playing that fans want playing. But I'd still feel that we showed enough in that game where you say, OK, we've got that about us, but the lack of concentration, the conceding of goals early in games is a big problem for me at the moment, because if I'm any team coming up against Arsenal now, I'd say, OK, let's start fast. And then at the end, let's stay in the game. If it gets to the end, let's stay in the game and then let's see, because they're conceding goals as well. So I think they're it's being one of the teams that's meant to be up there, meant to be challenging. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that, and I still feel he's trying to find things out. Thomas Partey in that inverted. What's going to happen with...
Where do you stand on that, the Thomas Partey at right back?
Well, I can see what he's trying to do. He's trying to get an extra man inside there, so as you can keep the play moving, another midfielder in there, But then when Zinchenko comes, then you've got to... Obviously, then Declan Rice, who likes to play on the left. There's a lot of things that he's going to have to do, because Zinchenko, is he going to come in? Is he going to play White, Saliba, Gabriel and Zinchenko when he comes back? Is it Partey and Rice? So there's things that I think fans would maybe like to see go back to a kind of bit of normality. But I think that if you're going to try something, then you try it at this stage of the season, see how it works. Because I think at the end of last season, he was starting to use Partey in that position. Not sure it's working too much in respects of the fans. I don't mind it when dropping in there, but I believe that our biggest worry is concentration just now, because we've got the quality, we've got the ability. It's concentration.
Look at those fixtures, though. Manchester United, then Everton, then it's the North London derby, then Bournemouth and Manchester City.
This is the Premier League,
before the
man.
international break. Chelsea on the other side of it. I mean, I know it's but you can have a more comfortable run of fixtures.
You can, but like the thing is that Arsenal, with the monies we've spent and the players we've brought in, the attitude of the team, the attitude of the manager, we're not bothered about the fixtures. It's about getting to that next game and making sure that you don't lose it and putting the kind of performance where you don't lose it, worse ways, you know what I mean, you don't lose it and then you win it, because we're in a different mindset now. We can't look at them teams and worry.
What we were saying about Newcastle earlier.
This is where Arsenal are.
Do you think Partey will play it right back in those games?
I think that Mikel, he might go with it, but I'd probably get the back four back in with Ben White and Saliba and Gabriel and Zinchenko, and then Zinchenko inverts in. You know, but then what happens with Declan Rice? Does Declan Rice go on the right side? I know he prefers the left, but I think that this is the time to experiment. Let's see how it goes. If it's not, then he can go back to what he does, 4-2-3-1 or whatever he wants to do, 4-3-3. But I don't mind it at the moment, because again, it's like when Arsenal draw, it's like it's like a downer for everyone. We've only drawn the game. We've drawn the game. We haven't lost the game. Gosh.
But if it had been a late equaliser scored by Arsenal, it would feel a lot different.
It would have been, yeah.
And a late equaliser.
I was kind of like having myself in my house. I was having myself because we got to 2-1 and then Paulina scored, so it shut me up.
So Mikel Arteta experimenting with bringing a full-back into midfield, or as Ange Postecoglou calls it, just copying Pep, mate. We are going to look next at Manchester United. And
Looking at Nunez.
hello and welcome back. We're going to talk Manchester United next, because while they did take all 3 points against Nottingham Forest, that is their worst ever start to any Premier League game. They conceded 2 goals in the opening 4 minutes. And it's not just that it's a one-off. It feels like it hints at deeper issues at Manchester United, or it highlighted deeper issues.
I'd say, you know, especially with the sit-in, I'd say to Man United fans, continue. No, don't just sit in when you win. People saying, oh, you only sit in when you lose. But they should. I was quite pleased to see them do that sit-in when they lost. But, like, you look at Man United and it has to come from upstairs. There's too much going on. There's too much toxicity around the place. And the sooner they change that, I think, on the pitch, because I think they've got the players. You can see the fact that they came back. Bruno Fernandes, whatever people say, he's literally lifted the team up and he's dragged them through. They've got that quality. But I just think that there's just so much... It's just too up in the air. Players just signing. You know what I mean? Everything was happening. Nothing seems to can go right for them. Even though they've gone 20 games unbeaten at Old Trafford. Nothing seems to go right for them because there's too much going on, I think. It needs to be sorted out upstairs. Yeah,
it does feel like a club where you walk in on match day at Old Trafford and there is a lot happening.
Absolutely. I got trapped in the Munich tunnel last year on a protest day for a home fixture. It was that fixture against Leicester, actually. And yeah, it is a place which is rumbling, and it sometimes is a little bit painful inside the stadium because you can feel it, even when they win. Like, yeah, OK, they got 3 points yesterday, but, you know, against a team like Nottingham Forest, if Man United are talking about the team they want to be, this big club, you know, that dominates the Premier League, then... No disrespect to Nottingham Forest, but you need to be beating them comfortably at home, and they're not doing that. They're 2-0 down, and on another day, if it's not a penalty, you know, they're not getting back in the game. They may be coming away with a point at best. So I think that it does highlight deeper-rooted issues. And so many of those goals you could dissect and say, that's not good enough. And those are things which you ask any of the old, you know, Manchester United players of old, they would not do that. The mistakes are basic footballing mistakes, and they just haven't been addressed for the last 4, 5, 6 years.
And I think this is the issue, which is why we're not pointing at this game and saying, yes, they should be comfortably beating Nottingham Forest, and yes, they shouldn't be making individual errors. But it doesn't feel like a one-off. It feels like this is a longer-term problem, as he was saying. Yeah,
absolutely. And the thing is, the build-up to this week's been dominated by former players saying, look, pull your finger out, you know, you need to wake up. You are sleepwalking towards a problem, and then suddenly they go 2-0 down in the first 5 minutes. Initially, I did think to myself, is this a group of players not playing for the manager? But I think overall, United are affected by a couple of things. One is the takeover. Is it happening? Is it not? It's affecting their transfer strategy. I would not have given the captaincy to Bruno Fernandes. I think Varane is the winningmost player in that team. He should have had the captaincy. I think Fernandes is a fantastic player, focus on playing, because there are too many moments when the going gets tough where you are in danger of losing Fernandes. He's a very emotional player and he gets involved in incidents with the referee and with other players that he shouldn't get involved in. And then, of course, you got those basic mistakes in as well. That's 3, not 2, but sorry. I just think there are far too many problems.
That's a fascinating point about the captaincy, because I look at that squad and I'm like, I don't know who the captain should be, because I agree on a certain level with Bruno Fernandes. I think he's a quality player and the stats back that up. He makes things happen. He scores, he assists. But Liverpool away last season, 7-0. He threw the towel in. And as a Manchester United captain, can't be doing that. And that carries on through. That's you. That's who you are. And I think that moving forward, I mean, there was so much noise around Harry Maguire. And you know, I feel for Harry Maguire. I don't think he's had the professional support he is owed for being, you know, diligent in this whole difficult process for himself. But I think that looking at that squad, I'm like, I get what you're saying about Varane, but I don't even think Varane looks to me like a captain. In terms of the way he plays, I think all the players are not scared, but there's too much noise around the club for anybody to take it by the scruff of the neck and move it forward in the right direction. It's a tough time there.
What I would say with Bruno Fernandes and the captaincy is that he is somebody that, with the passion and the way he drives the team, you just feel like if they could get rid of everything that's going on around that place and get everything sorted, the recruitment, the management side, all that stuff, he just needs players around him, for me. Whether he's the captain or he's not a captain, he needs players around, because we played
with some great captains. Did they? You know, Tony Adams was a fantastic captain. Yeah, you've had a number of other captains for England and for Arsenal. Do they need other things, or are they players who lead with the armband or without the armband? Well,
the thing is, Tony was obviously a captain, led by example with what he done on the pitch, the way he carried himself. Obviously, that's the captain that we all know, the upstanding guy, the one that doesn't do things like what you mentioned at Liverpool. I could never dream of him doing that, someone like Roy Keane. I could never dream of them players doing that. But in the current climate, the way he's playing, and people seem to give the captaincy to the best player, the most influential player, he's somebody that, when you watch how he plays, he looks to me like he's very frustrated. He needs better players around him, much better players around him, players of the same stature and higher, so you can hold him to account as well. I don't think there's many players in that dressing room that can say too much to him, even though you can see Varane's won a lot more than him. I just feel that he's somebody that's got it because he's the biggest personality in there. He's not afraid to speak. He comes out and speaks all the time after games. And I just feel that his performances as well is what's got him that.
Yeah, I agree.
He does those things. I think he had better players. He might be a different player.
But how do you think his body language? Because he shows negative body language when somebody's not on the same page as him. If he plays a through ball and no one's on the end of it, if no one gives him the ball, his body language is negative. And I don't think you can have that as a captain. That's not me not saying he's a good player. He's a good player. But,
those are the things.
But how does that then affect you?
Well,
if my body language is bad,
me.
it affects you.
That will affect me.
And then it affects the next person.
Yeah,
that would have affected me.
Yeah.
But
would you have ended up having a row on the pitch?
Probably would have had a row. But the captains
definitely on the training ground.
Captains that I had would not put me in that.
Would never put you in that situation. Look, there's a lot to be fixed at Manchester United, as you said. It's a place where it does feel there are fault lines running throughout it, and they may yet be able to get past them. They've got Arsenal up next. It's going to be fascinating to see how that one goes next weekend. For now, though, thank you very much to Darren and to Izzy for joining us. We will see you at